you want to get started?
Awesome. Yeah, sure.
Sure. So like I said, my name is Jesse. This is my third year on the team. I am the business team captain as well as game analytics strategy manager for all the years that those positions have existed since my first year. You can go on with that and everything.
Yeah, I'm with Brissy. I'm the team technical manager, so I deal more with the program and build side of the teams, but I do a lot of the graphics with Jesse. And I've been on the team for 3 years. In 2014, the team went to the World Championship with Cascade Effect, and then after that, we kind of rebranded, just made a sharper logo, which is what we'll be talking about today. And yeah, that's all you really need to know about me.
And if you're a little confused about what exactly we'll be covering, why graphic design is important and why you're all here is there are several reasons why it's an important aspect for your team, one of which being outreach and fundraising. You generally want to have enticing advertisements and effective outreach tools for social media and various other forms. Another aspect is that in alliance selection at competitions, generally if you have very good advertising and a colorful pit, and generally if people know who you are, that's the first step towards getting picked onto an alliance in what we've found. So a lot of what we've done at competitions with banners and structures has helped us network with other teams at competitions as well. So the first question to kind of ask yourself for this is who on your team wants to do it and who will do it. So you always want to have someone who's passionate about what they're doing and not just slugging along because they have to. So try to find the person or people on your team who enjoy doing it and want to learn more about it. The other part of that is if you, like I said, if you have someone who doesn't want to do it, then it won't be great. Also, what's the part I'm missing here?
You want mentors to help you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like, going along with that, if you have someone that wants to do it, but they don't have anyone to help them, they're going to have a harder time of like succeeding and trying to do that. So I guarantee if you just look around your school, you will find someone that knows how to use Photoshop in design, something like that, someone with an artistic skill. So you just need to look out and ask if you don't already know who that is. So one of the things when like you're creating a logo is you want to know who your team is. So let's like talk about that a little more. Our team for the first year when we went to Worlds, we were kind of this like goofier team, not a very not a team with like set on going to Worlds, not a team that was very rememberable. But like as you can see here, we have just like a flags and pom poms. Then we moved on. When we went to state, we're like awesome. We went to state, so we have our school mascot, the Falcon, with the little red beanie as we wear. And then after we went to Worlds, we saw how a lot of the teams they knew what their team was. They're just like, our team's a professional team, we're branding, we're a company. That's how a lot of teams act at Worlds, really. So we came back and we changed our logo. We made one logo that we used across everything. We sharpened up as a team. We all got button ups. Not to say that's sharper. We're more unified as a team for clear set goals.
Yeah, and another piece on that is when designing your logo and advertisements and such, and your team identity and name as a whole, you always want to look at your team's members and kind of form your graphics and identity around that. So if you're kind of like we were in our earlier years of Atomic Robotics, it wouldn't fit with the personality our team had of being kind of more recreational and easygoing, to have a really sleek, kind of low contrast logo. Whereas if as we went on in the later years, it kind of made more sense to have a more business-like look with the more unified beanies and button-ups and bow ties. And generally, you just want to consider who on your team is going to be representing what identity you choose for your team. And that's kind of the point of that, is to have everybody on your team under the same umbrella and representing it to have a cohesive image. So everybody will remember the team that acts as they portray themselves and advertise, more so than if you have a really business-like, professional-looking logo and then are kind of more easygoing and laid back. There's a bit of a dissonance there where you don't entirely connect those two. So part of the logo design is that you generally want to have something memorable and simple on your logo. So generally, if you have a really complex piece of artwork that it looks really good, you won't have a specific point to remember and associate with it. So if you think of some of these examples, like the Shell gas station, if you see a Shell in any piece of artwork, just a clip art Shell, you'll probably think of the gas station. Or if McDonald's, a yellow arch. So for us, it's the atom. We kind of moved from our first year's Atomic Robotics, we moved from a more busy, complex logo to a very sleek logo featuring the atom. So we kind of want you to remember us when you see an atom or something of the same color scheme. So usually if you have a simple symbol that kind of represents part of your logo or name, then that's really good for judges as well as teams to make the connection in their head of who you are and remembering where to go, like for your pits and whatnot. So if you have a bright orange shirt with a purple gorilla on it and then have, you know, your team name be something completely unrelated, then it won't quite match up when the judges are trying to find you in your pit.
Yeah, to go along with that a little bit, like there's a lot of teams that do this very similar thing. Like up in Alaska, Schrodinger's hat. Their whole thing is a top hat, a green top hat, to be more exact. Then you have like teams like in Florida that's like masquerade, and all you ever see when you see their shirts or their design is just a mask, and like that's all you'll remember when you see them. Is you'll just remember that one thing. So that's what you try to want everyone to remember you guys.
As far as the logo design goes, touching on what I kind of said earlier, some things to consider. You identify with your team what you want to go for, be it more recreationally easygoing or very intense and sleek. You kind of want to have the design of that to match. So you're not going to have a super high contrast starburst that, you know, has comic book lettering for the title of your team. If you want to have a more professional look about you and identity. And part of that is also all the team members being on the same page of what you want to do. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. You just want it, like, as you can see in the bullet points, like, you want everything to match. Like, you don't want to have one team name that clearly has a color. Like, I don't know what team name that would be, but there's some like that, and you don't want it to just be too crazy. That's all I have to say for this slide, really.
Yeah, and this is kind of more specific instance, but as far as the background, no background bullet point goes, and that kind of falls more under versatility of your logo. So he designed this year's, or these last 2 years' logo for Atomic Robotics, and one really nice thing that we can have, as you see on the banner and in the slide contrasting, is that we can have the lettering be white or black depending on what background we have to put it on, and generally some flexibility in shape and size is good. So if you have a very vertical logo, that might not work on shirts, or if you want it embroidered on something, or generally things like that to consider for shape and size.
So for some tools that we use, these all aren't for logos. As you can see, Adobe Illustrator is what we want to start using logos for, because what's the reason for that?
Because in Illustrator, it's based on vector points, so you can size an image to any size, big or small, and it's really easy to use the shape builder tool to kind of create your logo and make it more unique, whereas in Photoshop and other programs, it's based on pixels, so you can't size it up to however big you want and without it being blurry and losing detail.
Yeah. Starting from the top, for Photoshop, we use that for posters and flyers, because that's one of the main things Photoshop is like for. I guess you could say. I personally like Photoshop. That's what we made this logo in, and it works fine. Lightroom for photos and pictures, because like sometimes if you get a photo that isn't right, you still want it to look good. Like you got a shadow in it, you want to get rid of that, and then you're always going to want to share those photos with people that don't have access to those photos. We already talked about Lightroom, and then markers. That's just like going around your school. Like if you were trying to sell sweatshirts like our Sister Team 9880 did, they made a bunch of posters around the school with just markers that looked really good and took no time. Like they took 30 minutes to make a banner that would just be hung up in the hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The biggest point about markers is that they're flexible and you don't have to have pre-required skills to use them. And that we've noticed that the kind of homemade look seems to go off better at our school, whereas a more like it seems more endearing, and you want to support that more so than a poster made to look too sleek or something of the sort. So we've just found that personally that markers seem to, like large banners made of markers seem to work better at our school. So for the process, this isn't something that we're specifically telling you to do either way. There's not necessarily a right or wrong. Just a couple things to consider when you're making things like this are you want to kind of experiment either way. We personally just jump into whatever program we're using to just kind of play around and see what works. We generally tend to produce better work if we see what's happening and can just try all the variations. We know a member of 9880 last year, Javen, who made their logo, he liked to very meticulously sketch out every piece of his work before he scanned it in and followed the exact line. So whatever process you have, just experiment around, see what works best for you. As far as file types go, this is just a smaller point, but make sure to always save it in a variety of file types. PNGs are good because you don't have to have a background, it can be transparent. So it's good to save your logo as a PNG and you can put it on any flyer or poster without having to crop it out. JPEGs are just generally for high quality images. You have a question?
What about GIFs? What about GIFs or GIFs? GIFs.
It's a video.
No.
It's
Yeah.
like a moving thing.
Usually for those
Well,
are
there's
just
high
the
quality.
several frames looping around, right? So
Well, they're also you can also have them just be one photo. You can also just have them be one photo.
I've found that for the most part they're hard to share and upload. So aside from if you want to, usually I see people using them to share really short videos or a highlight of something, which those can be used too. And PDFs are nice because you can have the font be accessible across all files. So if you have a Word doc with a specific font, then it won't be accessible on another computer. That font won't show up. So generally that's what PDFs are for. You want to talk about publication a bit?
Yeah, so for publication, so you make this really great poster or like a logo that you want to put on a shirt. You need to get that shown. You need to show people that logo. You need to get it out to the public. So one of the ways is for printing. Like if you're making a banner like this, you have to print it. You have to go. I think we got this through Office Depot. So you need to find different companies that offer what you're looking for, and then find the right price and how you want it to be made. There's also making a structure. At our state competition, we wanted this to be shown very prominently in our print, our pitch. Yeah, there you go. And so we made a structure that was above our table. So because we didn't want it on the side of the table like it is now. If it's on the side, no one's going to be able to see it. So we made this thing. We'll show you in the next slide what it was. We made this thing so that people knew that was us, that we could show people how we made it. There you go. It's that's
The upper left, yeah.
yeah. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so these are just some examples of our printed media. For, like you said, at the pit, it was a huge success to have the large PVC structure of the banner. We were noticeable all the way from the bleachers to over across the stadium by the field. So that was a big success. You don't want your banner just hanging on the side of a table because then no one's going to actually see it unless if they're already at your pit. Yes?
What's that mascot?
The one and only Albert Einstein. That was a picture taken at Idaho State when they had a line of representatives of mascots. Of course, trifold presentation boards are something that we all do. We opted to do too because it got across a lot more information, and we got to share not only our accomplishments and some of what we've done, but also who we are, and for people to kind of get more well acquainted with our team if they were to come visit our pit. Luke was talking about the banner earlier. In the lower right, there's a flag that we had in our second year as Atomic Robotics before we redesigned the logo. Flags are nice because you can kind of they're a little bit more flexible. You can have them on banners or have them be more of a crowd spirit sign type of thing.
They're also easier to pack than banners.
Much easier to pack than banners, yeah.
As for social media, that's another way you can show your graphics and all your designs. But we use social media as our outreach tool. That's just how you'll outreach other teams. We have a Facebook page, Atomic Robotics. We have reached out to many teams in India, Britain, many places. Russia, yeah. And then they've reached out to us as well. So that's how you can just communicate with a lot of different teams across the world, and you'll be able to show, if you made this really cool graphic, you can put it on your Facebook and have people all over the world see it and talk about it. And when you're making graphics, like a poster, link your social media, because that's your only way that people will be able to contact you if they're curious about something.
So when designing different posters or flyers or brochures, you have to make sure you're paying attention to who you're marketing to and what generally the goal is for it. So as far as target audience goes, we were making, for the dessert auction, the Robotics Family Fun Night, or whatever it might be called this year, I forget off the top of my head. But for last year, for the dessert auction, you kind of want to include more details about where, when, how much, and why is the main part. For adults, they want to see why they're supporting you and why they should attend your events more so than kids. For kids, just want to have an instantly recognizable image that draws them in. Although that is true for everything, more so for things targeted at kids, such as advertisements for STEM events or things of the sort. FTC teams, we've been working a lot towards having more instructional material for FTC teams on their social media and YouTube as well. So we've been posting YouTube videos and different tutorials and such on Facebook and YouTube. And the main thing that you want to come across with there is that other teams want to come see what you're doing. You just have to target it towards FTC teams and make sure it's well known that this is an informational video that might be more informational than something else. And judges, usually you just want to have a really quick highlight sheet for presentation boards, or we made a fact sheet for our judging presentation last year. A very key point is just to keep it very brief and summarized into the most important parts, because they don't have a whole lot of time to look at your PIT or engineering notebook, so you have to make sure you get to the point quickly. Do you want to talk about the next?
Yeah, so when you're creating these flyers, you will always have a goal. For that first one, it's fundraising. And when you're doing a fundraising goal, you want to state why you're fundraising, what you need. If you're just saying, we're fundraising, that's great, you're telling people you're fundraising, but then they're not going to be inclined to give you money because they don't know what their money's going towards. But if you say, we're fundraising to get to Oakland, or we're fundraising to get this new kit of parts, people will want to donate towards that because they know what their money's going to. What's the second one? Raising awareness for FIRST and STEM. That one's not about your team. that one's about first in STEM. You can always have a little thing about your team on like the bottom saying that Atomic Robotics or whatever team name made this. But that one's always going to be talking about first in STEM, and that's going to be more of an informational thing. And then team awareness, that is just reaching out to your general like public, trying to get everyone to know about FDC, your team, that your team's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's better.
Some examples for some of the something that we printed out and gave to teams at kickoff. That was advertising our 24-hour live stream that we did right after the kickoff. We did a live stream on YouTube and built a robot in 24 hours. That was a super cool experience, as well as the 2-week challenge that we had, which is a scrimmage where after 2 weeks of the kickoff, then we hosted a scrimmage where teams could come and have it as a build day and see what we were doing and collaborate. The second image is the aforementioned poster of the dessert auction last year. That, as you can see, was very key points of what's happening and why you're interested, and then at the bottom, kind of who it's supporting. That third image is when we made it to Super Regionals. That was a fundraising poster for the whole trip as far as travel and hotels go. And the big thing about that was our school is all very excited for our team and for the program to make it so far. So we hung that all over the school. That was a pretty good success. The lower left graphic is from our sister team Aftershock, talking about the hoodie fundraiser that Luke was mentioning before, where we had school logos on hoodies and with personalized names and such. The next is a logo concept that I made for the team that might be used in a patch, maybe, that we were talking about. The next is a business card. Of course, business cards. The main point to remember is that the most key part of information, the contact information and social media links, are very prominent. And the last is a 2-week challenge graphic that I put on Facebook for advertising for other teams. One thing that you can consider when you're posting online graphics is you can make them super complex with intense backgrounds and not have to worry about ink on printers and such. And I think that's it. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them.
Yeah. What if you discovered that there was another team out there that had a similar name? Do you have any recommendations for how you might differentiate yourself?
Yeah, so we haven't ran into a problem with a similar name, but definitely similar logos, as atoms are a fairly universal thing that a few teams have come across. And generally, I think it's just that with a similar name, as long as there's a fairly distinguishable part, maybe add a the or an extra adjective to it, maybe. And for the logo, I think that's kind of the most important part. As long as you differentiate yourself visually, then people will be able to see.
Yeah, one thing for that is for all your logos, you should have your like team number in there. If there's another team that has your like very similar name, at that competition or something, you're going to want to more talk about your number than your team name, so people don't get you confused.
Yeah.
So Worlds, there was a team like Atomic Fusion or something Atom or Atomic. So we always would just address people as Team 3005 instead of Atomic Robotics, so there's no confusion.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't have any questions, I think
Just about.
Alright. Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you all very much for coming. Hope you learned a thing or two. It's early for all of us, so I know that it might have been a little rough for me, so thank you for sticking through that.
I think that
Yeah.